The mining drill bit through another layer of crystal rock deep inside planet Kepler 442b. Daeho wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the readings on his scanner. The numbers looked good. Very good. This vein of rare crystals would keep. The colony running for months. "Young me, what do you see on the geological scan?" Daeho called out to the woman working at the survey station 20 meters away. Young me looked up from her equipment. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and dust covered her work clothes. She had been studying rock formations for 3 years on this remote planet. "The crystal deposits go much deeper than we thought. Maybe another 100 meters. Down." Daeho nodded. At 42 years old, he had seen many mining operations across different worlds. This one felt different somehow. The crystals here were unlike anything he had worked with before. They seemed to pulse with a faint inner light when the mining equipment got close. "Tae-jin, how is the new tunnel coming along?" Daeho asked the younger man operating the heavy drilling machine. Tae-jin was only 24 and still learning the mining trade. He had joined their small crew 6 months ago. "The tunnel is almost ready, sir. Just need to clear out some more debris." Their fourth team member, Hee-jin, sat at the communications station near the tunnel entrance. She monitored all their equipment and kept contact with the main colony base on the planet's surface. The base was small, only 50 people total, but it was their lifeline to the rest of human space. "Any word from the surface?" Daeho asked Hye-jin. "All quiet today," she replied. "The next supply ship is not due for another 3 weeks." Daeho felt satisfied with their progress. The mining operation was going well. They were ahead of schedule and the crystal quality was excellent. But something nagged at him, small things that did not quite make sense. The temperature readings had been changing in strange patterns. Sometimes the tunnels felt warmer than they should. Other times, cold spots appeared in areas that should have been heated by the equipment. Young Mi had mentioned unusual electromagnetic readings, but they could not find the source. Deep beneath them, far below the mining tunnels, something ancient stirred in the planet core. It had been sleeping for over 2,000 years. The vibrations from the human mining equipment had slowly awakened it from its long rest. The creature was called Velthar, in the old languages of worlds long dead. It was a hunter unlike any other in the galaxy. The Velthar did not hunt for food like normal predators. It fed on something much more valuable than flesh. It consumed fear, terror, and the life energy of thinking beings. For thousands of years, the Velthar had traveled between worlds. It would land on a planet, hunt the intelligent species living there, and feed until nothing remained. Then it would sleep until it needed to feed again. This planet had seemed empty when it arrived, so it had gone into deep sleep in the warm core. But now there were new minds on this world. The Velthar could sense them far above. 4 minds full of thoughts, emotions, and delicious fear waiting to be harvested. The creature began to move upward through the rock, its body shifting and changing to pass through solid stone like water. Back in the mining tunnels, Tae-jin finished clearing the debris from the new passage. He loaded his equipment cart and prepared to move to the next work area. The tunnel was dimly lit by portable work lights, creating shadows that danced on the rough walls. "I am moving to Section 7, Tae-jin called out to the others. "Be careful." "In there," Daeho replied. "Some of those new tunnels are not fully stable yet." Tae-jin waved and pushed his cart deeper into the tunnel system. The wheels made echoing sounds as they rolled over the uneven floor. He had done this same routine dozens of times before. Check the tunnel walls, clear any loose rock, and set up new support beams where needed, but today felt different. The shadows seemed darker somehow. The air felt heavier. Tae-jin tried to shake off the strange feeling. Working underground for long periods could play tricks on your mind. Every miner knew that. He reached Section 7 and began unloading his equipment. The work lights cast their harsh white glow on the tunnel walls. The crystal formations here were beautiful, catching and reflecting the light in rainbow patterns. Tae-jin had grown to love the beauty of these underground spaces. Behind him, something moved in the deeper darkness beyond the light. Tae-jin did not notice. He was focused on his work, checking the tunnel support beams and making notes on his data pad. The sound of his own equipment masked any other noises. The Velthar had reached the mining level. It studied the young human from the shadows, learning about its prey. The creature could sense the emotions flowing from Tae-jin's mind. Concentration, mild boredom, a little homesickness for the world he came from. All normal feelings that would soon become much more interesting. The Velthar was a master of patience. It had hunted countless species across the galaxy. Humans were new to it, but they seemed similar to other intelligent prey. They had the same basic fears, the same survival instincts, the same delicious terror when they realized they were being hunted. The creature began its work slowly and carefully. It caused a small piece of rock to fall near Tae-jin, just enough to get his attention. When the young man looked up, the Velthar shifted one of his work lights, making the shadows move. In an unusual way, Tae-jin paused in his work. He could have sworn he saw something moving in the tunnel behind him. He picked up his portable light and shined it into the darkness. Nothing there except empty tunnel and more crystal formations. Must be getting tired, he said to himself, but the Velthar was just getting started. It had all the time in the world to play with its prey before feeding. The hunt had begun, and soon these humans would learn what it meant to be food for something far more ancient and dangerous than anything their species had ever faced. Back at the main work area, Dae-ho checked his watch. Tae-jin had been gone for almost an hour. That was longer than usual for a routine tunnel inspection. He made a mental note to check on the young man in a few minutes. The Velthar smiled with anticipation. Soon, very soon, the real terror would begin. Tae-jin felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Something was definitely wrong in Section 7. The shadows kept moving when they should stay still. Twice now he had heard sounds like footsteps echoing from deeper in the tunnel, but when he looked, nothing was there. He tried to focus on his work, but his hands were starting to shake. The simple task of checking support beams suddenly felt impossible. Every scrape of metal against rock made him jump. Every flicker of the work lights made him spin around to look behind him. Get it together, he whispered to himself. It is just an empty tunnel. But the Velthar was far from finished playing with its first victim. The ancient predator had learned that fear tasted much better when it was slowly built up over time. Quick kills were wasteful. Terror that grew slowly like a fine wine provided much more nourishment. The creature caused another small rockfall, this time closer to where Tae-jin was working. The young man dropped his tools and grabbed his portable light. He swept the beam across the tunnel walls, searching for any sign of movement. "Hello?" he called out. "Is someone there?" His voice echoed back from the empty tunnels. The sound seemed to go on forever, bouncing off the crystal formations and fading into silence. Tae-jin waited, listening carefully. Nothing but the distant hum of mining equipment from the main work area. The Velthar moved silently through the rock walls themselves. Its body could shift between solid and liquid states at will. This ability had made it the perfect hunter for thousands of years. Prey could never escape when the hunter could move through any barrier. Tae-jin decided he had done enough work in Section 7 for today. He began packing up his tools, moving faster than usual. The sooner he got back to the others, the better he would feel. Working alone had never bothered him before, but today was different. As he loaded his equipment cart, the work lights began to flicker. First, just one light, then another, then all of them started blinking on and off in a random pattern. Tae-jin's heart began beating faster. Equipment failures were dangerous this far underground. He reached for his radio to call Dae-ho, but when he pressed the talk button, Only static came out. The radio had been working perfectly just an hour ago. Now it produced nothing but harsh white noise. The Velthar watched from inside the tunnel wall, feeding on the growing fear that flowed from Tae-Jin's mind. The taste was excellent. Human terror had a rich, complex flavor that the creature had not experienced before. Most species produced simple, basic fear, but humans seemed to have layers of different emotions all mixed together. Tae-Jin pushed his cart toward the tunnel exit as fast as he could. The flickering lights made strange moving shadows on the walls. Several times he thought he saw shapes, following him just at the edge of his vision, but when he turned to look directly, nothing was there. Behind him, the Velthar began to take more solid form. It appeared as a tall, dark shape that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The creature had no fixed form, but it usually chose shapes that would create maximum fear in its prey. For humans, it decided that a tall, thin figure with too many joints would work well. Tae-Jin was halfway back to the main work area when all the lights went out at once. Complete darkness surrounded him in the tunnel. He fumbled for his personal flashlight, his hands shaking badly now. When the light finally came on, he swept it around the tunnel in panic. Something was moving in the darkness ahead of him. Something, tall and wrong-looking, that did not belong in any human mining operation. Tae-Jin opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. His voice had frozen with terror. The Velthar moved closer, savoring the perfect fear that poured from its victim. This was the moment it enjoyed most in any hunt. When prey finally realized they were not alone, that something dangerous was stalking them, that all their assumptions about safety were wrong. Tae-Jin tried to run, but his legs would not obey him. The flashlight shook in his trembling hands, making the beam jump wildly around the tunnel walls. The dark figure kept getting closer, moving in ways that hurt to look at directly. Then the creature reached out with its mind and touched Tae-Jin's thoughts directly. The young man felt something cold and ancient slide into his brain like ice water. His flashlight fell from numb fingers and clattered on the tunnel floor, the beam spinning in crazy circles. The Velthar began to feed. It drained the life energy from Tae-Jin slowly, wanting to make the experience last as long as possible. The human's fear, his memories, his hopes for the future, all of it flowed into the creature like the finest meal it had tasted in centuries. When it was finished, nothing remained of Tae-Jin except his equipment and work clothes scattered on the tunnel floor. The Velthar had consumed everything else, leaving no trace of what had happened. The creature felt satisfied and stronger than before, but it was still hungry. 3 more humans waited above. Back at the main workstation, Dae-ho looked at his watch again. Tae-Jin had been gone for almost 2 hours now. That was much too long for a simple tunnel inspection. "Young-mi, when did you last hear from Tae-Jin?" he asked. The geological specialist checked her equipment logs. "About 90 minutes ago. He said he was moving to Section 7. Dae-ho felt a knot of worry forming in his stomach. Tae-Jin was young, but he was not careless. He always followed safety procedures and checked in regularly when working alone. "Hee-Jin, try to raise him on the radio," Dae-ho said. Hee-Jin tried several times to contact Tae-Jin, but got no response. His radio might be damaged, or maybe he is in a dead zone for signals. Dae-ho made a decision. "I am going to Section 7 to check on him. Young Mai, come with me. Hye-Jin, stay here and monitor the communications." The 2 miners gathered their equipment and headed into the tunnel system. Dae-ho carried a powerful work light and a medical kit, just in case Tae-Jin had been injured in an accident. Young Mai brought her geological scanner, which could detect heat signatures and movement. They reached Section 7 15 minutes later. Dae-ho shined his light around the work area. He found Tae-Jin's equipment cart, his tools scattered on the floor, and his work clothes in a pile near the tunnel wall. But there was no sign of the young man himself. "This does not make sense," Young-Mi said, studying her scanner readings. There are no other heat signatures down here except ours. Daeho examined the scattered equipment carefully. Everything looked normal except for one detail that made his blood run cold. Taijin's work clothes were not torn or damaged. They had been removed carefully and folded as if the person wearing them had simply vanished into thin air. "We need to search the other tunnels," Daeho said, but his voice carried a tone of dread that he could not hide. Somewhere in the darkness around them, the Velthar watched and waited, already planning its next move. Daeho knelt beside Taijin's folded clothes and examined them carefully. In his 20 years of mining on dangerous worlds, he had seen accidents, equipment failures, and cave-ins. He had never seen anything like this. People did not just disappear, leaving their clothes behind in perfect condition. Young Mi scanned the entire area again. He said quietly, "Look for any kind of energy signature or heat trace." Young Mai worked her scanner across every surface in Section 7. The device beeped and clicked as it searched for clues. "I am getting some strange electromagnetic readings, but they keep moving, like something is interfering with the scanner itself." Daeho stood up and activated his headset radio. "Hyejin, we found Taijin's equipment and clothes, but he is not here. Something is very wrong down here." Static filled the radio channel for several seconds before Hyejin's voice came through. "What do you mean, his clothes? Where is Taijin?" "I wish I knew," Daeho replied. "We are coming back to base camp. Start preparing an emergency report for the surface colony." As they gathered Taijin's belongings, Daeho's mind was already working on the problem. His military training from before he became a miner was kicking in. When facing an unknown threat, you gathered information, protected your people, and developed a plan. The Velthar watched them from deep within the tunnel walls. It was impressed by how quickly the older human had taken charge. Most species panicked when pack members disappeared. This human was different. Instead of fear, the creature sensed determination and protective anger flowing from Daeho's mind. The alien predator found this interesting. In thousands of years of hunting, it had rarely encountered prey that responded to danger with organized thinking, rather than terror. Usually, the loss of the first victim sent the others into blind panic, making them easy to pick off one by one. Daeho and young Mi made their way back through the tunnel system toward base camp. Daeho kept his powerful work light moving constantly, checking every shadow and corner. Young Mi stayed close behind him, her scanner still picking up those strange moving energy readings. "The electromagnetic interference is getting stronger," she reported. "Whatever is causing it seems to be following us." "Keep scanning," Daeho said, "and stay alert. I do not think Taijin had an accident. I think something took him." When they reached the main work area, Hyejin was waiting with worried eyes. "Did you find any trace of him?" "Just his equipment and clothes," Daeho said. "Hyejin, I need you to try contacting the surface colony. Tell them we have a missing person emergency and request immediate assistance." While Hyejin worked on the communications, Daeho began implementing security measures. He moved all their equipment into a central area under bright lights. He checked their weapons locker and distributed emergency flares and cutting tools. To Young Mi and Hyejin. "What do you think happened to him?" Young Mi asked. Daeho was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I have seen strange things on frontier worlds. Sometimes there are life forms that we do not understand. Things that do not show up on normal scanners." The Velthar was becoming frustrated. Instead of spreading panic through the remaining humans, Daeho's calm response was actually making the others feel safer. The creature could sense their fear levels dropping as they followed their leader's organized approach to the crisis. This was not how hunts were supposed to work. Prey should become more frightened after losing a pack member, not more organized. The Velthar decided it needed to escalate its tactics. It began by manipulating the mining equipment around their camp. Heavy machinery started moving on its own. Drill bits began spinning without being activated. Work lights flickered and dimmed in patterns that spelled out threatening messages in the old galactic languages. "The equipment is malfunctioning," Jin called out as her communications console began sparking. Daeho studied the pattern of the malfunctions. "This is not random equipment failure. Something is controlling our machines." Young-mi looked up from her geological scanner, her face pale. "Daeho, I am detecting a large energy signature moving through the rock around us. It is big, and it is definitely alive." The Velthar grew impatient with these humans who refused to panic properly. It decided to reveal itself and begin hunting in earnest. The creature began emerging from the tunnel wall, taking solid form in the shadows beyond their lights. But Daeho was ready. He had positioned the work lights to eliminate dark corners and had prepared improvised weapons from mining equipment. When the tall, dark shape began forming in the shadows, he immediately activated a bank of emergency flares. Brilliant white light flooded the work area. The Velthar recoiled, its form becoming unstable in the harsh illumination. For the first time in millennia, the ancient predator felt something it had almost forgotten: surprise. "Young-mi, get those portable floodlights set up now," Daeho shouted, grabbing a plasma cutter from the equipment rack. "Jin, keep trying to contact the surface." The creature tried to retreat back into the rock walls, but Daeho had anticipated this. He fired the plasma cutter at the tunnel wall where the entity was attempting to escape. The superheated beam caused the rock to explode in a shower of sparks and melted crystal. The Velthar shrieked, a sound like metal tearing that echoed through the entire tunnel system. It had been wounded. After thousands of years as the perfect predator, a human had actually hurt it. "It can move through solid rock," Daeho called out to the others. "But it does not like bright lights, and it can be injured by energy weapons." Young-mi had the floodlights running now, filling every corner of the work area with blazing illumination. "The energy readings show it is moving away from us, deeper into the tunnels." Daeho kept the plasma cutter ready while he thought about their situation. They were trapped underground with a dangerous alien creature that could move through solid rock. But they had learned something important. The creature could be hurt, and it avoided bright lights. "We are going to fortify this position," he announced. "Maximum illumination. All energy weapons ready, and we stay together. No one goes anywhere alone." The Velthar retreated to a deeper part of the tunnel system to consider this unexpected development. In all its thousands of years of hunting, no prey species had ever wounded it on the first encounter. These humans were different from anything it had faced before. For the first time since awakening on this planet, the ancient predator felt something that might have been doubt. But it was still hungry, and there were still 3 humans to feed on. It would just have to be more careful about how it approached them. The hunt was far from over. 3 hours had passed since the encounter with the alien creature. Daeho had turned their mining base into a fortress of light. Every available work lamp, emergency flare, and portable floodlight was positioned to eliminate shadows. The bright white glow made the underground chamber look like the inside of a star. Young-mi worked at her scanning station, tracking the electromagnetic signals that seemed to follow the creature wherever it went. "The energy signature is moving. In circles around our position, it keeps coming closer, then backing away." "It is testing our defenses," Daeho said, checking his improvised weapons for the 4th time. He had modified 3 plasma cutters to work as energy rifles and set up motion detectors at every tunnel entrance. "Jin, any luck with communications?" Jin shook her head in frustration. "I can send signals, but something is blocking them before they reach the surface. The interference gets stronger whenever that thing comes near." Daeho studied the layout of their position. The mining base was located at the junction of 5 tunnels, which gave them good sight lines but also multiple directions for attack. He had blocked 3 tunnels with mining equipment and focused their defenses on the 2 remaining approaches. The Velthar was indeed testing their defenses, but it was also learning about its unusual prey. Through its psychic abilities, It could sense the emotions of the three remaining humans. What it found puzzled the ancient predator greatly. The two females showed normal fear responses, elevated heart rates, and stress hormones that indicated proper prey behavior. But the older male was different. Instead of fear, the creature sensed focused determination, protective instincts, and tactical thinking. This human was treating the situation like a military problem to be solved. The Velthar had encountered warrior species before on other worlds. They usually responded to predation with fierce but undisciplined attacks. This human was doing something entirely different. He was learning the creature's behavior patterns and adapting his defenses accordingly. "Movement in Tunnel 4, Young Mi announced, watching her scanner readings. "The energy signature is getting stronger." Dae-ho aimed his modified plasma cutter toward the tunnel entrance. The motion detectors he had placed there were still silent, which meant the creature had not entered the tunnel physically yet. It was probably moving through the rock walls again. "Can you pinpoint exactly where it is?" Dae-ho asked. Young Mi adjusted her scanner settings. 2 meters inside the wall, moving parallel to the tunnel. It is definitely avoiding the areas with bright lights. Dae-ho made a quick calculation and fired his plasma cutter at the wall. The energy beam punched through solid rock-like paper. From inside the wall came another of those terrible shrieking sounds. "Direct hit," Young Mi reported excitedly. "The energy signature just spiked and then moved away fast. The Velthar was beginning to experience something it had never felt before in thousands of years of hunting: frustration. These humans were not behaving like proper prey. They were learning its abilities and finding ways to counter them. Worse yet, they were actually winning these encounters. The creature decided to try a different approach. Instead of physical attacks, it would use its psychic abilities to plant fear directly into their minds. It reached out with its mental powers and tried to touch the thoughts of the older human male. Dae-ho suddenly felt a cold presence trying to enter his mind. Instead of panic, his military training kicked in. He had been taught mental discipline techniques for resisting interrogation. He focused his thoughts on protecting his team and pushed back against the alien intrusion. The Velthar recoiled in shock. Not only had the human resisted its psychic attack, but the man's mind had actually pushed back. In thousands of years, no prey species had ever successfully defended against its mental powers. "Something just tried to get inside my head," Dae-ho announced calmly. "This creature has psychic abilities as well as physical ones." "Is that even possible?" Hye-jin asked, her voice shaking slightly. "Apparently it is," Dae-ho replied. "But it can be resisted. Focus on protecting each other and do not let fear take control of your thoughts." Young Mi was studying her scanner with growing excitement. "Dae-ho, I think I understand how this creature moves through rock. The electromagnetic readings show it changes its molecular density. When it wants to move through solid matter, it becomes less dense. When it attacks, it becomes more solid." "Can we use that information against it?" Dae-ho asked. "Maybe. If I can modify the scanner to emit electromagnetic pulses instead of just detecting them, we might be able to disrupt its ability to change density." Dae-ho nodded approvingly. "Do it. Hye-jin, help her with the technical modifications. I will keep watch." While the two women worked on modifying the scanner, Dae-ho continued monitoring their defenses. The motion detectors remained quiet, but he could feel the creature's presence nearby. It was watching them, trying to figure out a new approach. The Velthar was indeed watching, and it was deeply troubled. These humans were not just surviving its attacks, they were studying it like a scientific problem. They were learning its weaknesses and developing countermeasures. This had never happened before in its long existence. For the first time since awakening on this planet, the ancient predator began to wonder if it had chosen the wrong prey species. But it was too proud and too hungry to consider retreat. It would find a way to defeat these unusual humans. "Modification is complete," Young Mi announced. "The scanner is now an electromagnetic pulse generator. If the creature tries to phase, Through rock near us, this should disrupt its molecular control. Good work, Deho said. Now we wait for it to make another move. They did not have to wait long. The creature began approaching through Tunnel 2, moving carefully through the rock wall. Young Mai tracked its progress on her modified scanner. Range: 50 meters and closing, she reported. It is moving slower than before, probably being more cautious. Let it get closer, Deho said. We want to make sure we hit it with full effect. The Velthar crept closer to the human position, planning to emerge suddenly behind their defenses. It could sense their elevated stress levels and felt satisfied that they were finally showing proper fear responses. Range 10 meters, Young Mi whispered. Now, Deho commanded. Young Mi activated the electromagnetic pulse generator. A powerful wave of energy flooded the area around their base camp. Inside the rock wall, the Velthar suddenly found itself unable to control its molecular density. Its body became partially solid while still inside solid rock. The creature screamed in agony as rock and alien flesh tried to occupy the same space. It thrashed wildly, trying to escape, but the electromagnetic field was disrupting all its abilities. Keep the pulse going, Deho shouted, grabbing his plasma cutter. I am going to finish this. He fired multiple energy bursts at the wall where the creature was trapped. Each blast caused more shrieking and thrashing from inside the rock. Finally, the electromagnetic pulse began to weaken as the modified scanner overloaded. The Velthar managed to extract itself from the rock and retreat deeper into the tunnel system, but it was badly injured. Dark alien blood dripped from wounds, caused by its struggle with the solid rock. Did we get it? Hye-Jin asked. Young Mi checked her scanner readings. The energy signature is moving away from us again, but much weaker than before. I think we hurt it badly. Deho allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. We are learning how to fight this thing. Next time it attacks, we will be ready. But the Velthar was also learning. As it retreated to heal its wounds, the ancient predator realized that these humans were unlike any prey it had ever encountered. They were not just trying to survive. They were actively trying to defeat it. The creature began to experience something entirely new in its long existence: respect for its prey. The Velthar retreated to the deepest part of the tunnel system, where the rock was still warm from the planet's core. Its wounds were healing, but slowly. The electromagnetic pulse had done more damage than any physical attack it had ever endured. For the first time in thousands of years, the ancient predator was forced to truly think about its situation instead of simply hunting. These humans had wounded it twice, countered its abilities, and shown no signs of the panic that made other species easy prey. In its deep hiding place, the Velthar began to use its psychic abilities differently. Instead of trying to plant fear in the humans' minds, it carefully listened to their thoughts from a distance. What it discovered changed everything it believed about intelligence and prey species. The older human male, the one called Deho, was not thinking about escape or survival in the basic sense. His mind was focused entirely on protecting the two females with him. Even when faced with a deadly alien predator, his primary concern was not his own safety, but the welfare of others. This concept was completely foreign to the Velthar. In its thousands of years of hunting, it had never encountered a prey species that put the survival of others above their own survival instincts. Most intelligent species abandoned their weak when faced with superior predators. Meanwhile, in the fortified mining base, Deho was working on his own understanding of their situation. He had been thinking about the creature's behavior patterns, and something important had occurred to him. Young Mi, Hye-Jin, I want to try something different, he said, setting down his plasma cutter. This creature is obviously intelligent. It has been testing our defenses and learning from our attacks. Maybe we can communicate with it. Communicate with the thing that killed Taejin? Hye-Jin asked in disbelief. Think about it, Deho explained. It could have killed all of us by now if it wanted to. It has abilities we cannot fully counter. But instead, it keeps probing our defenses like it is trying to understand us rather than simply destroy us. Young Mi considered this idea while studying her scanner readings. The electromagnetic signatures have been getting more complex. At first, they were just basic energy patterns. Now they seem almost like they are trying to form structured signals. Exactly, Deho said. I think it is trying to figure out how to communicate with us, just like we are trying to figure out how to communicate with it. The Velthar was indeed attempting something it had never tried before, understanding prey instead of simply consuming it. Through its psychic connection, it could sense that these humans possessed something remarkable. They had technology, yes, but more importantly, they had cooperation, sacrifice, and genuine care for each other. Deho walked over to Young Mi's modified scanner. Can you adjust this device to send structured electromagnetic pulses instead of random bursts? I think so, Young Mi replied. What kind of structure do you want to send? Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, geometric patterns, basic concepts that any intelligent species would recognize. While Young Mi worked on modifying the scanner again, Deho explained his reasoning to Hyojin. If this creature is as intelligent as it seems, it will recognize mathematical patterns as a form of communication rather than an attack. The Velthar sensed the change in the human's electromagnetic emissions before the first structured pulse was sent. The pattern that reached it was unmistakably intentional. The first 10 prime numbers repeated 3 times. This was not an attack or a defensive measure. It was an attempt at communication. For several minutes, the creature simply absorbed this new concept. In its entire existence, no prey species had ever tried to communicate with it as an equal. They begged, they screamed, they threatened, but they never tried to establish intelligent dialogue. Slowly, carefully, the Velthar began to respond. It used its own electromagnetic abilities to send back a simple pattern, the same sequence of prime numbers, but in reverse order. Deho, look at this, Young Mi called excitedly. We are getting a structured response. It sent back our prime number sequence in reverse order. It understood, Deho said with satisfaction. Now let us try something more complex. Over the next hour, the humans and the alien creature engaged in a basic mathematical conversation. They exchanged geometric patterns, algebraic sequences, and even simple physics concepts. Each exchange proved that both species possessed advanced intelligence. The Velthar was experiencing something entirely new, intellectual curiosity about its prey. These humans were not just clever in the way that made them difficult to hunt. They were genuinely intelligent beings with their own understanding of the universe. As the mathematical dialogue continued, the creature began to examine its own behavior and motivations. For thousands of years, it had simply accepted that it was a predator and other intelligent species were prey. It had never questioned whether this relationship was necessary or natural. I want to try sending something more personal, Deho announced. Young Mi, can you encode emotional concepts into electromagnetic patterns? That is much more difficult than mathematics, she replied. But I can try to create patterns that represent basic emotions like curiosity, friendship, and peaceful intentions. The signals that reached the Velthar were unlike anything it had ever experienced. The humans were not just demonstrating their intelligence, they were trying to share their emotions. The patterns clearly indicated concepts like cooperation, protection of others, and desire for peaceful coexistence. This was when the ancient predator began to question everything it had believed about the nature of existence. If these humans could feel such complex emotions, if they could cooperate and protect each other even in mortal danger, were they really just prey animals to be consumed? The creature began to send its own emotional responses back to the humans, but it had no experience with positive emotions like friendship or cooperation. All it could express were concepts like hunger, loneliness, and ancient sadness. Deho, the response patterns are getting very complex, Young Mi reported. I think it is trying to tell us something about itself. These look like expressions of isolation and longing. Deho studied the patterns thoughtfully. I think this creature has been alone for a very long time. Maybe it does not hunt because it enjoys killing. Maybe it hunts because it is the only way it knows how to interact with other intelligent beings. The Velthar was stunned by this human's insight. Through their electromagnetic connection, it could sense that Deho had somehow understood the deep loneliness that had driven its predatory behavior for millennia. No other being had ever recognized the pain behind its actions. For the first time since awakening on this planet, the creature began to consider that there might be alternatives to hunting and feeding on other intelligent species. These humans had shown it something it had never imagined: the possibility of communication, understanding, and perhaps even companionship. The ancient predator made a decision that would have been impossible just days earlier. Instead of planning its next attack, it began to wonder if it could learn to interact with other beings without destroying them. The transformation had begun. Part 5. Understanding and Transformation. The Velthar retreated to the deepest part of the tunnel system, where the rock was still warm from the planet's core. Its wounds were healing, but slowly. The electromagnetic pulse had done more damage than any physical attack it had ever endured. For the first time in thousands of years, the ancient predator was forced to truly think about its situation instead of simply hunting. These humans had wounded it twice, countered its abilities, and shown no signs of the panic that made other species easy prey. In its deep hiding place, the Velthar began to use its psychic abilities differently. Instead of trying to plant fear in the humans' minds, it carefully listened to their thoughts from a distance. What it discovered changed everything it believed about intelligence and prey species. The older human male, the one called Deho, was not thinking about escape or survival in the basic sense. His mind was focused entirely on protecting the two females with him. Even when faced with a deadly alien predator, his primary concern was not his own safety, but the welfare of others. This concept was completely foreign to the Velthar. In its thousands of years of hunting, it had never encountered a prey species that put the survival of others above their own survival instincts. Most intelligent species abandoned their weak when faced with superior predators. Meanwhile, in the fortified mining base, Deho was working on his own understanding of their situation. He had been thinking about the creature's behavior patterns, and something important had occurred to him. "Young me, Hae Jin, I want to try something different," he said, setting down his plasma cutter. "This creature is obviously intelligent. It has been testing our defenses and learning from our attacks. Maybe we can communicate with it." "Communicate with the thing that killed Taejin?" Haejin asked in disbelief. "Think about it," Deho explained. "It could have killed all of us by now if it wanted to. It has abilities we cannot fully counter. But instead, it keeps probing our defenses like it is trying to understand us rather than simply destroy us." Young Mai considered this idea while studying her scanner readings. The electromagnetic signatures have been getting more complex. At first, the rescue ship from the surface colony arrived 12 hours later than scheduled. Captain So-Jin had brought a full security team, expecting to find evidence of equipment failures, cave-ins, or other mining accidents. What she found instead challenged everything humanity knew about first contact with alien species. The mining base was still blazing with work lights, but instead of defensive positions, she found Deho, Youngmi, and Hae Jin sitting calmly around a modified communications array. Complex electromagnetic patterns flowed between their equipment and something deeper in the tunnel system. "Captain So-Jin," Deho greeted her as she entered with her security team. "You are going to want to see this. We have made contact with an intelligent alien species." Captain So-Jin looked around the chamber, noting the improvised weapons and defensive barriers. Your emergency report said you had a missing team member and hostile alien contact. Where is Tae-jin and where is this alien? Tae-jin was killed by the alien during its initial hunting phase, Dae-ho explained honestly. But the situation has changed significantly since then. The creature is no longer hostile. We have established communication and begun a dialogue. The Velthar sensed the arrival of new humans through the electromagnetic field. For a moment, its ancient predatory instincts stirred. More prey had arrived, enough to satisfy its hunger for months. But then it remembered its conversations with Dae-ho and the new understanding it had gained about intelligent cooperation. Instead of planning an attack, the creature sent a carefully structured electromagnetic message to the humans. The pattern translated roughly to, "New minds have arrived. Are they also friends like you?" Young Mai monitored the incoming signal and translated it for Captain Sojin. "The alien is asking if your people are friendly like us. It is not showing any aggressive behavior toward the new arrivals." Captain Sojin stared at the electromagnetic patterns flowing across Young Mi's screens. "You are telling me that a hostile alien that killed one of your team members is now having friendly conversations with you?" "The situation is more complex than that," Dae-ho replied. "This creature is not hostile by choice. It is an ancient being that has been hunting other intelligent species for thousands of years because it did not know there were alternatives. We showed it that intelligent beings can cooperate and communicate instead of fighting." Over the next several hours, Dae-ho explained everything that had happened since Tae-jin's disappearance. He described the creature's abilities, their defensive measures, and the gradual shift from combat to communication. The Velthar, meanwhile, was learning about human social structures by observing the interactions between the original mining team and the newcomers. It was fascinated by the way these beings showed respect for authority while still maintaining individual thoughts and opinions. Through the electromagnetic communication system, the creature began to share information about itself. It told them about its long journey between worlds, its loneliness, and its growing understanding that hunting intelligent beings had been wrong. "It calls itself Velthar," Young Mi translated. "But it says it wants to choose a new name to represent its new way of thinking. It wants to be called Kethmore, which means one who learns in its ancient language." Captain Sojin was struggling to process this unprecedented situation. "Assuming this is all true, what does this creature want from us now?" The response came immediately through the electromagnetic system. Kethmore wanted to make amends for its past actions. It offered to share knowledge about other dangerous predatory species that threatened human space. It also wanted to learn more about human cooperation and possibly help protect other species from creatures like its former self. "It knows about other hostile aliens?" Captain Sojin asked. "Apparently there are several species of predators that hunt intelligent beings across the galaxy," Dae-ho confirmed. "Kethmore has encountered them during its travels. It says some of them are much more dangerous than it ever was." This information changed everything for Captain Sojin. If this alien creature could provide intelligence about galactic threats and was willing to help defend human space, the potential value was enormous. "Can it prove its good intentions?" she asked. The response was immediate and dramatic. Kethmore emerged from the tunnel walls in solid form, showing itself completely to the humans. The creature was tall and dark, with a body that seemed to shift and flow like liquid shadow. Despite its alien appearance, its posture was non-threatening, almost submissive. Through electromagnetic pulses, it communicated complex star charts showing the locations of other predatory species and their hunting patterns. It also provided detailed information about their abilities and weaknesses. "This intelligence could save millions of lives across human space," Captain Sojin realized. "If we can warn other colonies about these threats, we can prepare defenses before they arrive." Kethmore had one more request. It wanted to travel with humans to learn more about cooperation and peaceful coexistence. In return, It would use its hunting skills to protect rather than destroy, becoming a guardian instead of a predator. 3 weeks later, Daeho found himself aboard a research vessel bound for Earth. He had been recruited by the Xenobiology Division to help establish first contact protocols with other supposedly impossible alien species. His success with Keth Moore had proven that even the most hostile aliens might be capable of change under the right circumstances. Keth Moore traveled with them, housed in a specially designed chamber that allowed it to communicate freely while preventing any accidental harm to the crew. The creature spent most of its time learning about human culture, science, and philosophy. "Do you think what we did here can work with other hostile species?" Young-Mi asked during one of their conversations. She had also joined the xenobiology team along with Hye-jin. "Not all of them," Daeho replied honestly. "Some species are probably too alien or too aggressive to reach through communication. But I think we proved something important. Intelligence exists in many forms, and most intelligent beings are capable of growth and change." Keth Moore had been listening to their conversation through the ship's communication system. It sent a message that translated to, "You taught me that strength comes from protecting others, not destroying them." This wisdom should spread to all thinking beings in the galaxy. The ancient predator had discovered something more satisfying than hunting and feeding on fear. It had found purpose in helping others and belonging to a cooperative group. For the first time in millennia, Keth Moore was no longer alone. Back on Kepler 442b, other mining crews had returned to work the crystal deposits. They found a small memorial to Tae-jin carved into the tunnel wall where he had died. But they also found something else, electromagnetic patterns embedded in the rock that told the story of how understanding and communication had turned an ancient enemy into a powerful ally. The story spread throughout human space, carried by traders, colonists, and military personnel. It became a legend about the power of human cooperation and the possibility of finding friendship in the most unlikely places. And somewhere in the depths of space, other predatory creatures began to sense something they had never felt before: doubt about the necessity of their hunting way of life. Through the psychic networks that connected many alien species, Keth Moore's transformation sent ripples across the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, the predators began to wonder if there might be better ways to exist than simply hunting and consuming other intelligent beings. The age of cooperation had begun, started by a mining engineer who chose to offer understanding instead of violence when faced with humanity's greatest nightmare. The hunt was over. The real journey was just beginning.